Thank you very much, Jerome. Your Excellency, the fourth President of the Republic of Kenya, and all the members of Magoha family, good afternoon. We are here today to come and condole with the family of our late colleague and friend. But before I say a few things, Your Excellency, when I was a little younger in service, I was hearing people called emeritus and was wondering who are those until it became us. So when you asked that we accompany you, I quickly ran to a forum that we have called PS Emeritus, where we console each other about insurance, about old age. And if you don't mind, Your Excellency, let me just take a minute to recognize them, starting with my sister here, Namwitaga Maito, Esther Koimet. She was a PS for Broadcasting and Telecommunication. PS Mochache, who was responsible for health. PS Njoroge, many people know him from energy, but he ended up in transport and also acted in water. We have PS Joe Okudo. Joe Okudo was responsible for sports. We have PS Josephta Mukobe, who was responsible for culture. And we have PS Saitoti, who was responsible for planning. The others have sent us with their condolence messages to the family of Professor Magoha. They cannot be able to join us for one reason or another. We are here to share with you the pain. We cannot pretend to feel the way you are feeling, members of Magoha family, having lost a brother just 2 weeks ago, and now we are here. But like the father has said, Jerome has said, Lord is good all the time. And we pray that you are given sufficient courage to bear this loss. We as PSs, of course, when the father was speaking about the foolish nature, we as the PSs, of course, responsible for accounting in the ministries, know the diligence with which Professor worked. I was responsible for the Ministry of Interior, and before CS Matiang'i left, he had introduced a system because of exam cheating, where the ministry would collaborate with the Interior and ICT to ensure that there is zero cheating in exam, never mind what's happening now. And we know that at 4 a.m., you have to be up to be at a container at 6. Otherwise, you receive a call from Magoha, and it won't be a kind call. And that is how exam cheating in this country had gone to zero. We all have our little experiences with Professor, but I just want to confess one, Your Excellency, which you may not have come across. When there was a small problem at the University of Nairobi, and there was a decision that the council takes temporary leave. Then around the weekend, that decision, after Magoha had issued a gazette notice, the decision seemed to have changed. And he felt he has been put under the bus. So one Sunday morning, he called me in his NEC office and said he wants to resign because he feels he is no longer wanted. How can he be put under the bus and the whole country will laugh at him? And he was serious. He has a letter of resignation. And I told him, calm down. We called Professor Kiamba and had a small chat. But remembered to remind him something I was told when I was in a situation like that early in my civil service job, that you have joined an arena which is called political. And sometimes when you're in this arena, you have to learn how to dance with the devil. Nikamwambia Professor, let Professor go to allow him to rest in peace and for all of us to commit support to you.
So thank you very much, PS. We'll ask our senior, CS Fred Matiang'i, to speak on behalf of the CSS.
Your Excellency, the fourth President of the Republic, Your Excellency, our wonderful, gracious First Lady, my colleagues from past service in government, the wonderful family of Professor Magoha, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, we've been together with this family since you asked us last week. Immediately this happened, that we tried to step in and work with them to deal with what Professor was handling just before he passed away. So we had the opportunity to sit with Michael, Joseph and Dora to deal with the function that happened on Saturday, and now we're here. And for that, we sincerely thank you, Your Excellency. On behalf of my colleagues, many of them have sent messages of condolences. And Your Excellency, when you called us round, all of us who were in the country were in that meeting with Michael and with Joseph and Dora. Some have had to travel because of commitments. But I'm here today with my colleague, my sister, Professor Margaret Kobia, who served as a CS for Public Service. My brother, Uhuru Yatani, who served as the Lord Chancellor of the Exchequer. My brother, Peter Munya, served as Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture. My friend, Joseph Musheru, served as CS for ICT. And my brother, Eugene Wamalwa, who served as Minister for Defense, and who also represented all of us at the burial in Game on Saturday. To be frank with you, I have a very long story to tell about Magoha because, as you know, I probably am one of the very few people who are privileged to work with Magoha very closely for about 7 years, 6.5, 7 years in government. Your Excellency, you may recall that sometime in November 2015, when you moved us around, I woke up in the Ministry of Education with all its troubles at that time. The whole story will be in my memoirs when they're published. But I remember that phone call at midnight when you asked me, umesikia yale nimefanya? I said, yes, sir. Takueleza kesho what I want to do. I was in Mombasa sorting out Waitiki because I was acting Minister for Lands then. Anyway, long story short, when I came to Nairobi, you spelled out what you wanted done. Then we started the work of putting together a system that would help remake our education sector. Then in around January, February, you appointed Professor Magoha as the chairperson of the Kenya National Examination Council. And I remember that memorable Saturday morning, as though it happened yesterday, when you rounded us up, together with my peers then Belio Kipsang, Nancy Macharia, Secretary TSC, Professor Magoha, and myself. And you spelled out clearly what you wanted done. You said must bring an end to examination cheating in this country. My colleagues know what we go through during those situations. Because you said, mwache ujinga wa kusa mtihani hapo. And you said this year, it's not going to happen. Ama mutafute njingine. Then that was the clarion call or order that we needed, which led to the formation of an amazing fraternity in government during some of my happiest days in this life. We teamed up, as you directed then, with CS Musheru, then CS ICT, my brother, the late Joseph Kaiseri, the CS for Interior. And you imposed a very punishing schedule on us. I'm now saying that after I've left the government, but you imposed a very punishing schedule on us, wanting updates on a fortnight basis of what you were doing to address the mess in the education sector. And we worked slavishly but very happily because you outlined specific results you wanted and all those wonderful people. And may the Lord bless the late Joseph Kaiseri and now my brother, Professor Magoha. I have never been happier and I've never worked with such wonderful people. From the Kenya School of Leadership in Mount Kenya, where we went that time with Joe Musheru, Joseph Kaiseri, and Magoha to meet with the DCCs and the education directors as you instructed us. We spent time there in the cold, trying to build a system of collaboration between the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Education to manage exams to make sure we sort this out. Professor Magoha was so committed that he actually traveled to Uganda himself. Because when we were looking at various systems around and we thought we could borrow a leaf from here, borrow a leaf from there, and so on, that which was close, he was so committed that he traveled himself. He said he doesn't want hearsay. He came here, he brought the report together with a critique on what we would do and change the whole thing. And we had a very enjoyable time doing a hard but pleasurable task of remaking the education sector. And through all that time, because even when more changes happened in government, I ended up in the Ministry of Interior, you insisted that we will not dismantle the tripartite partnership between the Ministry of ICT, Interior, and the Ministry of Education. As Professor Magoha himself liked to put it, we are joined at the hip. And so we must work together all the time. We spent long hours meeting all those wonderful Kenyans, and God has blessed us with wonderful people, called district commissioners, county commissioners, regional directors of education, and all those people. Every day repeating to them that what President Kenyatta wants is ABCD, because Professor Magoha said, we serve at the pleasure of number one, and our job is to outline his vision and ensure that it's delivered. All the tasks you gave at the Ministry of Education, and let me say here without fear of contradiction, because we live in a country where people are so dishonest, they love lies, they behave as if there was nothing happening yesterday, they are lecturing us now about things they think they are new. If Professor Magoha had not served as the Minister of Education, Your Excellency, your plan for NEMIS, the National Education Information Management System, would not have worked. And let nobody take credit for this. This was President Kenyatta's plan, together with the World Bank, and that's how we got to where we are, the data and the Minister of Education. Your plan on expansion of school infrastructure through 20,000 classrooms would never have worked. Your reform of the school bursary system would never have worked. The school desks program, I remember when you demanded of us that we move money to the villages and get carpenters in every village and have the desks done in the villages. Then you told Professor Magoha and myself, You don't want a story. You want results. And we sat, at some point, even some of our senior officers were trying to be a little bit smart, where they would cut corners. Joe helps us get a hold of Safaricom and the data from there for M-Pesa and payment. And we're able to move money on the digital platform very easily, across villages in the country. And many, many things that were done to remake the education sector in this country because of the commitment and the work and partnership that we did together. Professor Magawa was the turbo engine, and my colleagues can bear me out. Professor is the one who charged the room. Every time we were in the room, he's the one who supplied the energy. He was always vibrant and he wanted things to be done. And so, as one of our colleagues, CS Rachel Mamo, said the other day when we met, she said this, and frankly, I agree with her, that we celebrate Professor and we sincerely submit ourselves to the Lord and say, this man actually completed his work. He was full of energy. He did all of his work. There was nothing that you did with Magawa that was undone. He did all of his work. He lived his full life. Was never bored any minute. He never knew a moment for stories. And I have to say this, because again, this is another aspect of our society. In a country where these days we hardly go through a day without being reminded about the regions, who comes from what region and what region is important, what region should own government, and so on and so forth. Not once. And we hired across the board, we had many discussions. Your Excellency, not once did Magawa entertain a discussion about people's backgrounds, about people's ethnicity, about people's regions. Magawa was driven by only one consideration: delivery and excellence in getting the work done. His disdain for politics was not concealed, and his impatience for mediocrity was real. He had no time for pettiness and small talk, and small things around town. He was always driven for results. He said, what does number one want? That's what we do. And this is the way we go. For all of us who worked with Professor Magawa in cabinet, and for me and my colleagues in the education sector in the last 5 or 6 years, we'll be everlastingly grateful to God for the life of this, our wonderful brother. And if there is anything we can do in this world as a tribute to Professor Magawa, in our small way, wherever life takes us, wherever life finds us, we just try to emulate that thing. Honest, sincere delivery of service to the people, period. Nothing else matters. And because of that, a lot of work was done in our country. Your Excellency, there are many things to say. There's problems that you demanded solved and how you wanted. For example, a reorganization of the CQI program by the World Bank. We would never actually have discovered the challenges with that program if Magawa had not served as the Minister of Education. The program was going to be held hostage by certain officials of the ministry, and the government and the people of Kenya were going to lose if Magawa had not been minister in that. And when you insisted that you wanted to see for yourself the data and the facts and everything and how they were done, Magawa delivered. There wasn't a day that you gave assignments and you said things be done in a particular way that Magawa was saying or even grumbling. The other thing I never heard from Magawa for all the time that I worked with him, I never heard Magawa once whine and moan and grumble and complain about systems and people and what have you. He moved in one direction. When Professor Magawa stepped in the room, you knew a leader had arrived. When there was an argument, you predicted Professor Magawa's side even before the argument began. The side would be where the facts are, where the truth is. That is Magawa's side, no matter what. So honestly, this erudite scholar, very solid academic of unparalleled credentials. There are many people in this world who claim academic credentials. Magoha didn't have to lecture anybody about them. He lived them and you saw them. Since he passed away, I've been called by so many people, colleagues we worked with in the education sector from across the region, because people know how useful Magoha was, for example, to the Inter-University Council of East Africa, to the university standards and the university commissioning credentials across this particular region. Some of our countries in the region could not actually approve their medical schools without Professor Magoha looking at their curriculum. That's how solid and important he was amongst us. I hope that in celebrating him, we emulate those good things he did. Finally, I am not in authority these days, so I can only share hopes. I hope that somebody somewhere in this environment, in the context of all these things that happen and the cacophony, and the noises that we hear every day, many of them unhelpful to anybody, will think about how we can immortalize Professor Magoha's contribution to our society. Either one university will create a chair and name it after Professor Magoha, or a scholarship program and name it after Professor Magoha, or name a research program after Professor Magoha. And actually, if people were to be very honest and sincere, like the universities, and do something like that, a lot of us ordinary citizens of this country who admired his life and had an opportunity to work with him will make our small sacrifices and contribute to that, because that is the greatness of our society. Magoha exhibited the best of Kenya, not the worst of Kenya, the best of our country. And I believe when I see some of the things I see somewhere, someplace these days, I believe Kenya is better than this. And I think about the great people like Professor Magoha. And let all of us go forth and do whatever we can. There's only one request I have, and I was asked to make on behalf of my cabinet colleagues. Mama, I'm told there are 1 or 2 kids that Professor Magoha was supporting for school fees. Michael, my cabinet colleagues, those of us who served with Magoha in cabinet, under the leadership of our president, we will make a contribution, because the president told me to talk to my colleagues in cabinet to see whether there's anything he can help us to do to support 1 or 2 of those kids that Magoha was supporting. Let none of them be stranded on account of our brother's departure. Our president is keen on this. He has invested a lot on this. He will help us and guide us to try and help some of those kids so that they are not stuck. And we will work together the way we have worked together, quietly with my brothers and sisters, ex-PSS, so that we also honor our colleague, because I think it's a morally right thing to do. It's the honest thing to do, and even in the face of God, it's the just and sensible thing to do at this time. We wish you all the best. All my colleagues who are not here, some of whom have traveled, have sent their messages of condolences. They're here. Michael, you know we are in very deep conversation with you on things that we need to do, some we don't need to say here. And I want to assure you, we will work with you. We'll do the best we can. No one, let's not pretend, no one will fit in Magoha's shoes. Let's not pretend. No one will fit in Magoha's shoes. We can only do the best we can, the way God will help us, or whatever God will help us to do, just to alleviate momentary pain and help you move to the next day as we all continue walking the journey of this life. May the Lord shine his face upon you. May the Lord hold you with his mighty right hand. May the Lord bless you indeed. And Michael, there's nothing more challenging than to walk in the footsteps of a towering father. May the Lord bless you, so that as you sustain that name and that generation, God will raise you up to keep to that particular legacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Waziri Matiang'i. At this moment, I would like to invite former Vice President, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, to also give his tribute.
My good friend, Father Mugunda. Yes, my brother. It's good to see you, though under very difficult circumstances. Your Excellency, they call you the fourth president. I call you my brother. And you cannot begin to isolate him and make him the fourth. He's still my brother and my president. Mama Margaret, Mrs. Magoya, your wonderful son. You shared those last moments very deeply with President Uhuru. You know, I didn't get very close to Professor Magoya, and I know why. He was so forthright. Not that I'm not forthright. and I knew, yes, we had a disdained politicians, but I think he was the greatest leader. And you combine these attributes, and you end up with a man of great excellence. And you can understand why you would have no time for tribal talk, as Fred has said, because he himself went beyond tribal boundaries. And why would he then get himself constrained here to talk of Aluo, Aluya, Mkamba, Kikuyu? In fact, I'm told when he went for vetting, that question was raised. And how he handled it, I think everybody was left aghast. Because he would then point out that as mediocrity. I was once, upon a time, Your Excellency, Minister for Education, for actually a good 3.5 years. And Mzee Mudi Awori, believe it or not, was my assistant minister. And the thing I remember that I did, there are two things. First of all, teachers came demonstrating along Harambee Avenue, and I looked through the window, and they said, "Minister with baby face, sink with the canoe, and not with the teachers." I remember that. Magoya did not have to go through that kind of torture, because it was firm. And he didn't have to handle a strike, because I was handling a huge strike that time. And from Foreign Affairs, where Mzee Moi had posted me, and I go to education, I believed we could do things in a more diplomatic manner within the education sector. It didn't seem to work, because I said we all know our problems. Because teachers wanted this pay thing, the late Katumanga and the team. That was tough. The next thing I remember, Your Excellency, is I actually outlawed the corporal punishment from our schools. I don't remember anything else major. But here we are celebrating. I think he was also a physician, wasn't he? A great medical man, chairman of medical dentists and practitioners, something. They worked with a young man called Daniel Yumbia, and they were able to put discipline, even at that level of medical practitioners, not just within the education sector. So you can understand why I shied away from meeting Professor Magoha, because you remind me of mediocrity when I was Minister for Education. So, is Magoha Luo? Is he a Luya? He's a Kenyan. And here we are really burying a true nationalist. Fred, I think you have said it properly. Nobody can replace Professor George Magoha. And this is the real bully. George was not. He just was putting across his point so that we can all end up with a better country. Are we not now paining? You know, he says he sees me doing things which are pretty controversial. And unlike George, I will continue doing those things until we realize that Professor Magoha wanted a country which is all inclusive, which is devoid of corruption, open corruption, a country that is spewing hatred right now. What would George think of hearing his number one? Because I've heard about number one severally. Number one now being victimized. I want to tell you, Kenyans, Joe, you, my brother, I suspect you're very close in terms of how old is who is older than who. If you, yes, between us, if anybody was today to go out and seem to victimize President Uhuru Kenyatta, I don't know what is going to happen to this country. Because in his time, allow me to say that, because he was Magoha's boss. I happen to have been in politics for a long time because I entered there young, even unmarried. And so I've seen it all. Even when Mzee Kenyatta left us in 78, I was at the Kenya School of Law. The first time I went to State House, I saw Mzee laying in state. And these men, great, some of them tall, blue ties, and must conclude, all of you have fallen short of Magoha standards except me. I'm wearing a tie. You're wearing a collar. You can get away with it. I actually must admit I had to think about it. And in honor of Professor Magoha, those standards, and compromisingly high standards, that is the brother we are escorting. And so I saw Mzee Moi take over from Mzee Kenyatta, and eventually Mzee Moi, Mzee Kibaki took over from Mzee Moi. Seamless transition. And nobody, no name calling. And I can tell you the truth, truthfully, that there are some with me in cabinet at that time who wanted Mzee Moi dispossessed of a place he stays, a place in Kibera, near there. And so when these friends brought the matter up in cabinet, of course we objected, some of us, these are no secrets anymore, and we said no. So Mzee Kibaki actually ordered Chris Murangaru and Kiraitu Murungi to deliver the title deed to Mzee Moi, to show that we must respect our leaders at that level if we are going to have a country. So what does Mzee Kibaki in return? President Uhuru takes over from Mzee Kibaki. He considered Kibaki his father. So what is this we are hearing around town? The pettiness about which Fred is talking. You hear things that clearly will remind you of a country like Zambia. When President Chiluba took over from Kaunda and he started saying Kaunda is a Malawian after having been president for 28 years, Chiluba did not last. So here as we celebrate this great Kenyan, a colossus of an academic giant and a nonsense minister, one who would he touched my heart once, and I tell you how, and then I conclude. He was announcing the results, and I now know, because President Uhuru had said, no more exam cheating. And then there's a school patched between, if you know the Rakanidi, between Marimanti and Sekuru, my village, on the river Tana. We named this school after my late mother, Mama Malia. George announces the most improved student that year. A little girl who had gone to Form 1, having scored only 100 points. And it's really failure. And this girl ends up getting a B and going to the university. That really excited Professor Magoha. He said, I don't even know where this Mama Malia school is. Wherever it is, we're very proud that the most improved girl in the whole country has come from a place nobody knows about. That was George, even lifting people from nowhere. Now, I must conclude by wishing this family well. Mama and Michael, you told me when I came, I've just been here for the first time. You were in school with Kennedy. Look for him and tell him to get a wife. Because he actually told me he was disciplining them. Yeah. So that we can end up with more Magohas. friends, it's important. Let's all stand together in solidarity at this time. If you think some of us are going crazy, it is because we think we love this country, like Professor George Magoha did. And now I've had so many of those secrets. If being opposition, I was opposition to Jubilee, so it was really, had I known some of these important tricks, I would probably have come out supporting you. But here is a man, a colossus of a Kenyan nationalist, whom we are trying to say kwaheri to. But again, as I making all the arrangements to bury him, it doesn't end up there. He ends up in the morgue. May the gracious Lord, the Father of humanity, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on Professor George Magoha. Controversial, yes, but straight, so that he will know the goodness of the kingdom in the hereafter. Amen.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Professor Magoha, in his straight talk, used to say he's only answerable to two authorities. One is God, then the second one, the appointing authority, who is His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. And he would say that without fear. So with that note, we want... So with that, we wish to invite His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta to give his tribute and his remarks. His Excellency.
Mrs. Magoha, family, Jana, your wife, the extended family, colleagues who we have worked together with. We're here today to condole with you, Mama, and your family, but also to celebrate the life of a colleague, a man of great integrity, a hard-working Kenyan, a sincere Kenyan, a man who was dedicated to the cause of education in this country. I had the opportunity to first meet up with Professor Magoha when he was still the Vice Chancellor at the University of Nairobi. And we had the opportunity to interact a number of times. And by speaking with him, I got to realize that this was a man who was not interested in position, but rather what he could do with position. You know, there's a very big difference. There are people who seek position for the sake of it. But there are those who are in position and are interested in what they can do with that position for the greater good. George Magoha belongs in that category of Kenyan. He was a man who, as I said earlier, would speak his mind. He was a man who did not fear speaking to truth. You may not like what he had to say. You may even disagree with what he had to say, but he would say it. And that, as much as he had great disdain for politicians, that is the mark of a leader. Because a leader leads from the front.
Some of the challenges that he had to face were challenges that many would have run away from, saying this is too difficult, or this is too controversial, or this is going to have a problem. Prof, as I used to call him, never backed down, never shied away, so long as he believed it was the right thing to do. He would lead from the front. He would lead from the front. When I appointed him after his term at the university ended, and I appointed him to head the National Examination Council, exactly what Fred said here. We were going through a lot of challenges with exams in this country. And when we met and went through, and I repeat again, leading from the front, Professor took it personally. Professor used to go and ensure where are the exams being printed, supervising it, not sending officers, supervising it himself personally. How are they being packed? Supervising it himself personally. How are they being shipped? Himself. When they land in Kenya, where they are, how they are, until they get to the respective containers. Assigning ministers and PSs and other officers, you are in charge to make sure this container is open, make sure the seal is intact, make sure this is intact, make sure this is intact, to the point that he brought integrity back to our exams. And there is no doubt, and I believe that when I made him a minister, I made the right choice in putting at the helm of education a man who deserved that position, and from there continued to do what he did in addressing the curriculum challenges that we had, in bringing on board a new education system. People may say whatever they want to say. Hiyo ni wataongea, utaona watarudi tu hapo hapo. Hoja wacha wapatiwe nafasi wapige gumzo. They will come back there. Kuna pahali ingine wataenda. Because it was not done to hate this one, to spite that one, to do this one. It was done in the interest of the children of this republic, to better prepare them for that future that was rapidly or radically different from the future that some of us had to look forward to. That is what he was preparing. Kenyans who are able to be up to the challenge of this changing world. And we are grateful to him for that. And we are grateful for his leadership. I think this country has lost not only a great soldier, a great soul, a committed man, but it has also lost a sincere individual, a loyal man, and a person who truly loved what he did. He had no time for the hairy-fairy of office. No, him, it was a job. You know, there are two types of people. There are people who talk a lot about what they will do and do nothing. And those are many. But there are people who will talk very little, but do a lot, and their deeds are seen. Magoha belongs to that class of people who are doers. Very little talking, but in executing. The deeds are there and will never be wiped out, no matter what anybody may wish or desire. My mama, and to your family, he was our colleague, and we worked as a team. We were a team. We were together. And as such, you are also our team members. And with us, you have a family, because we were a family. And we will continue to stand with you, and whatever it is that you may require of us, you can count on us, and we shall be there for you, just as Magoha was there for us and for Kenya. We shall be there for you and your family. May the Almighty God rest this great soul in eternal peace. We shall walk these final days as we prepare to give him a befitting send-off together, and you can count on us to be with you. Na wewe Steve, usijali hii watu wanapiga mdomo, wacha wapige bana. Najua mtu ambaye hana kitu kingine ya kufanya lazima apige mdomo. Wacha wapige mdomo. Hiyo ni dunia. Sisi tunaendelea na yetu. Mungu awabariki na walinde. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now we are through with speeches. I want us now to all arise and sing one hymn before Reverend Father